Okay, I'll call this May 15th meeting of the Mountlake Terrace City Council to order. Please rise and join me to the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. City Manager, any late to the agenda?
No late
I'm
changes.
sorry, we got to have roll call first.
Oh.
Councilmember Murray.
Present.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Councilmember Page.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
Here.
Councilmember Sonmore.
Here.
Mayor Matsumoto Wright and Councilmember Woodard asked to be excused.
Do I have a motion to excuse the members?
I move to dismiss both council members for this evening's meeting.
Good. Second.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. They are excused. All right. City Manager, late changes to the agenda.
No late changes, Mayor Pro Tem. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you. Jennifer, do we have public comment? Anybody signed up online or in the back?
No one signed up to speak in person, but we do have Sam Doyle who would like to give a comment online.
Very good.
And Sam, you'll have 5 minutes to speak.
Sam, take it away.
Okay. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Grabbing my notes here. Thank you for your time. I'm here to comment on the proposal regarding the purchase of the Flock ALPR system that records license plates, car make and model, and unique features like bumper stickers. Clearly, the nature of policing is increasingly complicated. And while I'm not an officer, I speak from the perspective of being an MLT resident, an American citizen with Fourth Amendment rights, a mom of 3, a healthcare professional, and a fellow public servant. I'm concerned that we're about to opt into a system of mass surveillance and that we don't know what we don't know with regards to this technology and the control of the data. Flock has a network of over 3,000 agencies in 42 states. This should give us pause. If we share data with Linwood, can Linwood share it with Spokane, Chicago? If so, as a city, you are now a participant in surveilling the American public, primarily innocent people. I'm also here as an ally for undocumented people, as I have concerns regarding data sharing with ICE. I believe that all humans deserve the same human rights, regardless of immigration status, and one of those rights is personal safety. Installation of Flock systems may infringe upon this human right for this population in particular. I understand that surveillance can help law enforcement agencies do their jobs by apprehending suspects more efficiently and quickly, and I support this goal. I am not against all surveillance per se. I am against compromising the psychological safety and privacy of an entire community without their knowledge in an effort to apprehend a small proportion of individuals who may have broken the law. Implementing this system without transparency and additional analysis may seriously damage the relationship that our police department has with all city residents. To decrease all crimes, the city must continue to invest in addressing the underlying causes: poverty, addiction, lack of housing, food insecurity, unemployment. Help residents make better choices by putting choices within reach. Invest money, time, space in creating a community and connecting people. A connected and cared for population is less likely to engage in criminal behavior in the first place. The police department's 2024 annual report includes 2 goals. 1, focus on fostering a culture of partnership with the community, and 2, be as transparent as possible. Increasing public surveillance will erode trust. Using public data to participate in a for-profit networks of mass surveillance of the American population is distasteful, disturbing, and dystopian. It will also put you, the city, at risk of legal action. Note the current case in Norfolk, Virginia. People will notice. From Flock's own government agency customer agreement, Flock may access, use, preserve, or disclose footage to law enforcement agencies, government officials, or third parties if Flock has a good faith belief that such use, access, preservation, or disclosure is reasonably necessary to protect the rights, property, or safety of Flock, its users, a third party, or the public as required or permitted by law. They advertise to customers, use our national search network to find the suspect vehicle across state lines. Up to 1 billion monthly plate reads. This is Flock's data, not the city's. understand what Flock can do with it, and see if it is in alignment with who we are as a city. Flock chooses not to share data with ICE, but who is to say they won't change their minds or be forced to legally? The IRS had never shared taxpayer data with ICE, but weeks ago, ICE and Homeland Security entered an agreement that now allows ICE to access taxpayer information for the purpose of immigration enforcement. Undocumented folks are being pulled from the streets by ICE. Horrifically, some have even been removed from the country without any due process, illegal per our country's constitution. I do not want our police to purchase a system that may aid and abet these unconstitutional ICE activities. If the Mountlake Terrace PD purchases a Flock system, there are options when it comes to storage and sharing of data. This would at least mitigate some harm to our residents. Flock's default provisions give the company a worldwide license to use customer data, which is stored for 30 days. However, you could amend the contract to limit the storage and distribution of the data to a limited list of departments, their sharing of our data, erase negative hits on the system within 1 day, and I know we would be the first to does not store for 30 days, but be the first. In closing, council members, I ask that you continue to critically examine this purchase before moving forward and that you not vote on this matter today. I firmly oppose this purchase. I urge the police department to host a town hall. Entering a contract with this for-profit company to share our data with a network of over 3,000 agencies should only be made with the explicit knowledge of this community. If this system is purchased, the contract with Flock should be carefully amended to limit data collection, storage, and dissemination to protect all of us. Thank you very much for your time, and I thank you all for your service to our community.
Thank you, Sam. All right. Mayor Pro Tem, two items. So I appreciate the comment and didn't want to stop it, but if there is a comment on a specific item on the agenda, please hold those comments until that agenda item comes up, not general public comment. We took the information in. Secondly, Councilmember Woodard has joined us online, and wanted to recognize that and promote him into online participation, and just wanted to make sure you are all aware of that. Very good, thank you. All right, with that, that concludes public comment, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yes. Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda items A, B, and C.
Very good. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Consent agenda passes. Moving on, we have a proclamation for Public Works Week. Councilmember Ryan.
Testing. Thank you. City of Mountlake Terrace Proclamation for the Public Works Week. Whereas public works professionals at City of Mountlake Terrace focus on providing stormwater, drinking water, wastewater, transportation, fleet, solid waste, development review, and emergency response services that are of vital importance to sustainability and resilience, communities and public health, high quality of life, and well-being of people. And whereas these services could not be provided within the City of Mountlake Terrace without the dedicated efforts of approximately 40 public works professionals who are maintenance workers, engineers, scientists, executive assistants, planners, grant and contract administrators, GIS and assistant management analysis, and field inspectors at all levels of government who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our transportation, water distribution, wastewater conveyance, and stormwater treatment and conveyance systems for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest of the residents, civic leaders, and children in the city of Mountlake Terrace to gain knowledge of and maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works programs. And whereas the year 2025 marks the 65th annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association, Canadian Public Works Association, recognizing the substantial contributions that public works employees make to protecting our national health, safety, and advancing quality of life for all. Now, therefore, Mayor Kyoko Matsumoto Wright, on behalf of the Mountlake Terrace City Council, does hereby proclaim and designate the week of May 18th through the 24th, 2025 as National Public Works Week, proclaimed by the City Council on May 15th, 2025. Congratulations. You want to get a picture? Oh, where are you? And if I could add after reading all that, I kind of feel like a scientist now.
Do any of you guys want to say anything?
Do you want to say anything?
Here, hold on.
I think Rich, that was.
Come on in.
I'm like, why am I in the middle now? This way? Okay, Rich wants to go this way. All right.
Wait a minute. I'm a scientist now.
I was going to make you an engineer.
Oh, I want to be an engineer.
Yeah, but I only went past Math 105.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Nice to see you.
Thanks.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate you having you all here to celebrate the Public Works Week. Moving on, our next is a presentation on the legislative session by Gordon Thomas Honeywell with our state lobbyists, Amina and Shelley. Amina's here. Shelley's online, I believe, right?
Can you guys hear me? Great. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. It's a pleasure to join you all today to provide an update on the work that took place in Olympia during the 2025 legislative session. Shelley, who is joining us virtually this evening, and I have had the honor of advocating on behalf of the City of Mountlake Terrace throughout this year's legislative session. Tonight, I'll walk you through an overview of the 2025 session, what it meant for the state as a whole, and how Mountlake Terrace's legislative priorities fared. Shelley will go over outcomes for additional legislative issues, and we'll wrap up with next steps. Before we dive into the details, I want to note that we developed a comprehensive end-of-session report that includes a summary of the budgets and breakdown of bills most relevant to cities, particularly those that align with Mountlake Terrace's legislative priorities. While the written report provides the finer details, my goal this evening is to highlight the major takeaways and give you a sense of the broader legislative landscape. Let's see if I can go on to, great. The 2025 session was, wrong slide, here we go. The 2025 session was significant for several reasons. First, it marked the beginning of a new two-year legislative biennium, making it a long session that lasted 105 days. During long sessions, the legislature adopts the state's 3 biennial budgets. operating, capital, and transportation, which guides spending over the next 2 fiscal years. To fully understand what shaped the session, it's important to consider the political climate. Following the 2024 election cycle, 24 new legislators joined Washington State Legislature. That level of turnover resulted in new committee assignments, leadership changes, and evolving policy priorities. Additionally, 2025 marked the beginning of Governor Bob Ferguson's first term in office. Democrats maintained strong majorities in both chambers, 59-39 in the House and 30-19 in the Senate. As the majority party, they controlled floor schedules and set the legislative agenda. Altogether, over 2,350 bills were introduced in 2025, covering topics ranging from public safety, land use, to infrastructure, environmental regulation, and government transparency. Of those bills, about 431 passed and were sent over to the governors for signature. Because 2025 was the first year of the biennium, bills that did not pass this session automatically carry over into 2026. This year's budget negotiations were uniquely difficult. Washington entered the session facing a projected $15 billion shortfall over 4 years, one of the largest fiscal challenges in over a decade. The shortfall, driven by slowing revenue growth and rising caseloads, influenced every fiscal discussion, and put many local project requests under intense scrutiny. There were concerns in the final days of the session that negotiations might stall and trigger a special session. However, after intense negotiations, all 3 budgets were adopted on sine die April 27, allowing the legislature to adjourn on time. The 2025-2027 operating budget totaled $77.8 billion. It funds essential services like education, public safety, healthcare, and human services. The legislature balanced the budget by enacting approximately $4.3 billion in new taxes and fees, making the largest revenue package in state history, and they left about $2.3 billion in reserves. The $7.5 billion capital budget supports infrastructure and facilities such as schools, housing, libraries, and behavioral health centers. This year, $201.3 million was allocated for local community projects, whereas in 2023, $231.8 million was allocated for these same projects. The average local community project award this year was $604,000. And although this was one of the most stable budgets, it was also extremely competitive, with legislators receiving 10 times the amount of funding requests. The $15.5 billion transportation budget, supported by the Climate Commitment Act revenues and a 6-cent gas tax increase, maintains funding for existing projects, but it did not include any new project investments. In fact, there were projects that were delayed due to reduced revenue. It reflects continued investments in transit, ferries, and preservation. While the 2025-2027 transportation budget has an expected shortfall of $1 billion, taxes, fees, and transfers from the operating budget will result in $3.2 billion revenue generated over the next 6 years. Let's see here. Now to Mountlake Terrace's priorities. Despite the challenging fiscal environment, Mountlake Terrace made great progress on its top legislative priorities. First up is the Mountlake Terrace Library. The city requested $800,000 from the state's capital budget to replace the aging roof and HVAC system at Mountlake Terrace Library. We worked closely with the 32nd legislative delegation, so Senator Solomon, Representative Davis, and Representative Ryu, to help elevate this request to capital budget riders. And while all 3 lawmakers supported the effort, Representative Davis actively worked to ensure this request was included in the House proposal. Her efforts resulted in $500,000 being included in the House's version of the budget for the Mountlake Terrace Library. In a year when many other projects around the state were left unfunded due to intense competition and limited capital budget capacity, Shelley and I are really excited to say that we were able to ensure the final budget included the House's $500,000 allocation, and this is all thanks to the strong support from your delegation and your advocacy efforts. I do want to say thank you all for coming down to Olympia to advocate on behalf of yourself. I know Shelley and I both enjoy spending the day with you all, so we look forward to it next year too. Next up is Main Street. So in addition to securing funding for the Mountlake Terrace Library, one of the city's top priorities this session was preserving previously awarded state funds for the Main Street revitalization project. I just want to note that this funding came very close to being lost this session. Budget writers recently adopted a new policy that automatically rescinds projects funding if it hasn't been spent within 4 years. Since the Main Street funding is several biennia old, it was flagged for removal. Budget writers were prepared to pull the money due to concerns about the project's readiness and long-standing delays. If it wasn't because of the scope change request that would move forward a smaller standalone phase of the project and the persistent advocacy efforts, the funding would have lapsed and the project could have stalled. Shelley and I worked with budget writers and staff to explain that prior delays were due to challenges in securing federal support, not local inaction. We made the case that the revised scope would allow the city to immediately use the funds. Following those conversations, the hold was lifted, the scope change was approved, and the funding was reappropriated. That said, preserving the dollars was just the first step. I just want to emphasize that if the project doesn't move forward, the funding will be rescinded by the end of the next biennia. So it's now up to the city to make sure that the money gets spent. Lastly, I want to note that the consistent project delivery helps maintain strong relationships with the capital budget writers. If the city can ensure timely progress on this project, it can reinforce the city's credibility and support future funding opportunities. The legislature also passed a bill this year aimed at promoting development near transit, and Shelley is going to be speaking to that in just a moment. But with that, I will pass it on to Shelley to go over the next slide.
Great, thank you, Amina. So good evening. I am going to review the outcomes from 3 policies that the city identified as key areas of focus for the 2025 session. The first policy area is housing. The city supported funding and policies that increase the complete spectrum of housing supply. And to do a comprehensive report on this policy area, we would be here all night. So for the sake of brevity, I'm just going to highlight 3 bills that passed this session that were kind of described as like the main bills when it comes to housing supply. The first is Senate Bill 5184, and it establishes statewide limitations on minimum parking requirements for residential and commercial developments. Residential parking is capped at half a space per multifamily unit, 1 space per single family unit, and commercial parking is capped at 2 spaces per 1,000 square feet. There are exemptions that are provided in various circumstances, and perhaps most notably for Mountlake Terrace, the bill is limited to only cities with a population of greater than 30,000. So obviously this does not apply to the city, but I'm sharing it for your awareness because it does apply to several of your neighbors, and it applies to the larger jurisdictions in the region, and they will be complying with it. The next bill is House Bill 1491. This is a bill that has been in the work for many years. It promotes transit-oriented development by requiring cities to allow multifamily housing in station areas near major transit stops. So around rail station areas, so light rail station areas, the average floor area ratio must be at least 3.5, which to give you some perspective, the floor area ratios in the buildings around the Mountlake Terrace light rail station already meet that. So the goal is to have higher density around light rail stations. And then around bus stations, the average floor area ratio must be at least 2.5. So not as high as around light rail, but still not going to be single family development. Buildings, and I guess I should also specify that that is bus rapid transit stations, not just your average bus station. Buildings that are constructed within a station area are required to provide at least 10% of all residential units as affordable. And then there's some exceptions to that based on local circumstances. This bill that I'm describing is a 42-page bill, so I won't be able to summarize everything this evening. But the reason that I mention it is because Mountlake Terrace has been actively engaged in this policy for several years, with the main objective being a grant program for cities who want to attract and prepare for higher density around their transit station. That's what you all have been doing, and there has not been state grant funding readily available to support that effort. And so as the state has been considering this policy, we've been beating the drum saying, if you want higher density, you have to support the infrastructure. And I'm pleased to report that the bill does include a grant program to be administered by the Department of Commerce for this very purpose. However, the budget does not include funding for that grant program, at least not in this current budget cycle. Oftentimes the legislature likes to create the bucket and then in the future fill the bucket. And so in this situation, the bucket has been created, but not filled. The final bill that I want to highlight in the housing category is House Bill 1096. And this creates an administrative process to split a residential lot. In some jurisdictions, this process was already the case. It was done administratively rather than needing legislative review. But this law makes it so that that administrative review takes place in every city in the state. The next policy area is parks funding. The city's Recreation and Parks Director, Jeff Butts, has done really an excellent job of identifying the eligible grant programs for city park projects. And so the city was ranked for 3 different grants and was on the cusp of being funded for 2. But as Amina mentioned, the capital budget was much smaller this year than it was in the past. It's a $7.5 billion budget this year. In 2023, just for some perspective, it was a $9 billion budget. So $1.5 billion less. However, the good news is that the Washington Wildlife and Recreation Program was funded at a level that allows a grant for the city for the Veterans Memorial Park Revitalization Project. And that grant is $500,000. And so really that credit for that grant really goes to your Recreation and Parks Department. The final policy area is public defense. In the lead up to the legislative session, the state Supreme Court considered a recommendation from the Washington State Bar Association to reduce the public defender caseload standards. And at the start of the legislative session, the court had not yet released its decision regarding the modifications to these standards. And so recognizing that the impact that change may occur or that change may result in for jurisdictions, the legislature proceeded to address public defense by investing $2.7 million for public defense grants to cities. So they didn't do anything to change the standards themselves because we are still awaiting the Supreme Court ruling. But $2.7 million to be distributed in grants to cities. And that's in addition to the $900,000 that has historically been available to cities for public defense grants. So that is a significant sum of money that's available, again, on a grant basis. So it does require the city to apply. And with that, I'll turn it back to Amina.
Thank you, Shelley. All right, now that session is over, what's next? First, I encourage all of you all to consider how you want to thank your legislators for their ongoing service. They've really worked hard for you all this session. As you know, it could be a thankless job, and appreciation from fellow elected officials does go a long way. So definitely find a way to see if you can thank them. Second, with the many bills that passed and the funding that Mountlake Terrace secured, there's significant work ahead. City staff, who already has full plates on their list of things to do, will have even more to do in the coming months and years to ensure that allocated funds are spent on time and projects are delivered successfully. Lastly, while it feels really early to say this, but it's never too soon to start planning for 2026, It will be a short 60-day session focused on supplemental budget adjustments and policy bills carried over for 2025. We'll work together this fall to update the city's legislative agenda and to reflect what's been accomplished and identify new priorities. The 2026 legislative session is going to start January 12th, so it's going to be approaching very soon. With that, I want to say thank you all for your time and attention today. I know we've covered a lot, and I appreciate your engagement and support of this process. Please don't hesitate to reach out to Shelley and I if you have any questions.
Very good. Thank you, Amina and Shelley. Do we have any questions? Councilmember Sonmore.
Hi, and thank you for driving all the way up here. I have a quick question. The $4.3 billion in new taxes was kind of over staggering when I looked at all the different things that they were upping taxes on. So with that being said, what are our chances for the city getting funding next year? Is it look more palatable, or is it more like this year? Well, I should say in 2 years, but.
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Shelley on this too, but we have been hearing some concerns that next year the budget is going to be even harder than this year, and so it's going to be a lot more challenging. But Shelley, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, Councilmember Sonmore. The distinction that I want to draw is the $4.3 billion in new revenue. That's over the course of 4 years. And it is in the operating budget, which is not typically where cities receive funding from. Usually when we're requesting funding from the legislature, we are asking for it from the capital budget. And so the reason that the capital budget was so small this year is because in years past, we've had federal dollars that have augmented the capacity of the capital budget. And this year it really was much more dependent on bond capacity. So I think there is roughly $350 million in bond capacity left for a supplemental budget. So that's a pretty small supplemental budget. There may still be some available federal funds next year, but I think the most direct answer to your question is we don't expect an increased opportunity in the short session.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Sonner. Thank you, Shelley. All right, we've got Councilmember Woodard. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just wanted to jump on. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I just wanted to say first, hello from the future. But secondly, thank you all for the work you're doing and the work you continue to do. I'm super humbled by the outcome of the library. I know this council wanted that support. We weren't 100% sure how that would play out. So the fact that that's the star out of this session is just, I think, a testament to your work and ability. And also just wanted to personally apologize. I was going to come down for our tour, but I was sick at the time, so I wasn't able to make it this year. But just wanted to say how much I appreciated you all, and congratulations. This was a very tough session, and that Mountlake Terrace got any funding is just a, again, sign of what a healthy relationship we have between our two organizations. So again, thank you all.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Woodard. Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you, Amina. It's so nice to have you here in person, and appreciated the opportunity to work with you this session. And Shelley, always appreciate your partnership as well. Very exciting news. I don't know that, I mean, obviously we were very hopeful, going into session. But I will say I am so pleasantly surprised with where things landed, and just do very much appreciate our delegation, particularly Representative Davis, and both of you, your work in advocating for us. I mean, these are incredibly important resources for our community, and I'm really, really excited that we were able to secure them. And I guess that's my follow-up question, my first one. Are they secure? Where is the budget? Does that impact us? Like, are we good? Like, I know there's like the budget. Like, help us understand if there's any, should we have any concern?
Well, the budget will be signed on, should be signed May 20th.
Okay.
And so we'll know for sure whether or not we're good and we're in the clear by May 20th.
Right.
But as far as I know, and Shelley, feel free to jump in, I think the funding for the Mountlake Terrace Library should be fine. Shelley, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, Councilmember Murray, you make a great point that we're presenting as though this is complete, but the final step of the legislative process is still to come. The governor has until May 20th to sign the budgets, and he is expected to take all the time until to make his decision. I will say that the capital budget is very rarely the contentious budget. And so I would put money, if I was a betting person, I would put money that the city's money for the library is safe.
Wonderful, thank you. That is super helpful to know. I would be curious, I mean, as you're encouraging us to start thinking about next legislative session already, I'm curious what bills didn't pass that maybe we were interested in or maybe should be thinking about in terms of, you know, both our consideration and conversations with our delegation here between now and next year.
Yeah, I'm going to defer that question to Shelley. She has a little bit more of that expertise.
Yeah. There should be a document in your council packet titled 2025 bills that will be considered most likely to return in 2026. So that's going to be your comprehensive list of bills to take a look at and see if there's something on there that is intriguing. The one that immediately comes to mind that I'm fairly confident will return and maybe is worth the city council's discussion is referred to as a neighborhood cafes bill. Essentially, it's a bill that puts some statewide standards in place for ease of citing and zoning neighborhood cafes, like local coffee shops, local places in single family neighborhoods. That's a bill that's been floating around the legislature for several years. And this past session, I thought some of the policy was making headway. And it kind of caught me off guard that it ended up not passing this year. So that's a concept. I don't know what your local city code has and how it aligns with that bill, but that's one that comes to mind. There were several bills that were introduced this year that were concerning to some cities. So it would be helpful to know if how concerning or are they concerning to Mountlake Terrace. I think in many instances, we reviewed the bill and we determined, you know, we're not, Mountlake Terrace is not going to weigh in on this. We're going to let the Association of Washington Cities engage. But since we have time between now and 2026, and we know some of these bills are already out there, it would be worth talking and determining if it is something that we want to support or if it's something that is really problematic and we want to find an alternative approach.
Great, thank you, Shelley, really appreciate it. And again, just appreciate all of the hard work, and I'm glad we're at a place where it feels like we can celebrate.
Of course.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Murray. Do we have any other comments, questions? Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you very much for this report. I know a lot of this is your reporting, and I know you did not increase our new taxes by $4.3 billion. I know that wasn't you. That's a kind of a joke there. But I did want to thank you for lobbying for us, for our city, to work on that library roof and the HVAC system. So that's like super duper. So thank you very much.
Of course.
Thank you, Councilmember Ryan. All right. Councilmember Woodard, did you still have a comment? See your hand raised.
Apologies.
No worries. All right, with that, thank you both very much. We really do appreciate the work that you've done for us. For years, you've been delivering time and time again, and beyond the odds, once again, you were able to pull it off and help deliver some important funding for us, and we appreciate it. So thank you. We'll look forward to working with you over the summer and putting together, looking toward 2026.
Yep. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have the review and vote on flock camera system in agreement with Police Chief Pete Kaw and Commander Scott King.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. So we're here to continue our discussion on the flock system and requesting that the council approve the city manager to sign the master service agreement with flock. The master service agreement is in the March 27th packet. Nothing's changed in it, so we didn't add it in. We did a pretty extensive presentation on Flock on March 27th. I do have Kristen McLeod from Flock here again, and she's going to give a brief overview before we answer more questions and have more of a discussion. So Kristen, go ahead and take over.
Great. Good evening. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, and community. Kristen McLeod, Public Affairs Manager with Flock Safety. It's a pleasure to be with you all again. I'm going to share my screen and just give you a little bit more to look at instead of just having to listen here. So as Commander King shared, I won't go too in depth, but again, happy to answer any technical questions. So Flock Safety is a public safety technology platform. We provide a variety of products to help communities and law enforcement help solve and prevent crime. The focus today is our license plate reader technology. And what these are they are motion activated cameras that are placed in fixed locations throughout the city. The deployment of the cameras, we work hand in hand with your police department to consider ingress and egress of the city, crime patterns and traffic patterns to select the most ideal location to place the cameras. And as mentioned, they collect a still image that is focused on a public right-of-way of the rear of a vehicle. And the cameras are focused on capturing vehicle details, not people. There is no facial recognition with this software. We are not a speed tracking camera or a red light camera. We're really about providing indiscriminate evidence to law enforcement. And that happens in a couple of ways. First, all of the images that are captured are uploaded into the AWS cloud. It is end-to-end encrypted, so you get data security. And each image is given a time to live, and that is a default 30 days. And at the 30-day mark, if that image is not retained as part of a criminal investigation, it is hard deleted and unrecoverable. And that database provides law enforcement the ability to search for an investigative lead and collect objective evidence as part of a criminal investigation. They will have to enter a search reason to access any of the images in the database, which also provides a really great way to ensure that the system is being used in accordance with department policy. The second thing that the system does is provide real-time alerts to wanted vehicles when they pass by a camera in your community. Officers will receive an alert within about 20 seconds to that wanted vehicle. We are integrated with the National Crime Information Center. So for example, if a vehicle was stolen out of Seattle and Seattle Police Department entered information into the National Crime Information Center with the vehicle's details, noting that it was stolen, if that vehicle passed by a camera in a Flock city, officers would be alerted to that vehicle entering or exiting that city, depending on where the camera was positioned. The same for National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, Amber Alerts. So if a vehicle is associated with a missing child, if that vehicle passes by a camera in a community, officers would be alerted to that. And we have a great partnership with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. We recently hit a milestone where we helped first responders, license plate reading technology helped first responders locate over 1,000 missing persons. So the cameras provide 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week coverage. The data retention is limited to 30 days to balance that privacy as well as provide investigative value. The city owns all of the data. So that means Flock will not share or sell your data to private third parties. You all own the data and are in full control over which law enforcement agencies, if any, your department elects to share that data with. And it's you can tailor that and delineate who would have access to directly search your cameras or who would have access to alerts that are created by the department for wanted vehicles. So again, really providing the ability for the department to tailor that information to the values of the community and the need of public safety. No personal data is collected or accessible in the flock system. And as mentioned, although there is no personal data in the system, it's the still images of the rear of vehicles. Security is really important. Data security is important to us. So the images are end-to-end encrypted and stored on the AWS cloud. I mentioned prior that a search reason is required and a user number is saved indefinitely so that there is a check and balance on the system. And with regard to transparency, this is an example of a transparency portal. And what the transparency portal is, it's a public-facing web page that provides the community information on how the department is utilizing the system and for what purposes. This is an example from Everett, Washington. So they're sharing their policy on external law enforcement access, their hot list policy information, what is detected, and some high-level statistics regarding how many vehicles passed by the cameras, how many searches were conducted in the last 30 days. So a really great way to share with the community exactly how the system is being utilized. And just to finish up quickly, we're working with over 70 law enforcement agencies throughout the state of Washington. And to give an example of how these departments are utilizing license plate readers to impact public safety, this is a story from Liberty Lake, Washington. A person was assaulted on a local hiking trail. The victim told authorities that an unidentified male suspect had attacked her before fleeing in his vehicle. Officers were able to check the flock system and identify a suspect vehicle looking at that location, and were able to narrow down with collateral information and find that suspect information. And they were able to arrest a person the following day. And that person is now charged with second-degree assault. And again, providing really critical investigative lead. Excuse me. And then this is an example of how we're able to locate missing vulnerable persons. This is a story shared with us from Port Washington, Wisconsin. A silver alert was issued when a senior had been reported missing by their family. They entered that senior's vehicle information into the flock system, creating a custom alert. And within minutes of that alert being created, the vehicle happened to pass by a camera in the community, which alerted officers to that vehicle's location, gave them a really great lead on where that vehicle might be. And they were able to locate that senior's vehicle and return them safely home to family within about an hour. That was a very quick, short explanation of the system and a high-level overview. So again, happy to answer any technical questions you may have. And Commander-in-Chief, if I missed anything, please feel free to jump in, and happy to continue to add more information.
Yeah, so the transparency portal, our plan is to put that on the police department's page on the city website, so it's easily accessible to our community.
Very good. Thank you, Kristen. And gentlemen, do we have any questions, any comments? Councilmember Pate.
Thank you. I'm more curious, and this is directed at our police department. I'm curious as to what the protocol is going to be to in releasing information, and and I'll bring up the case of down in Virginia, where a journalist spent a day, 300-mile area that he drove around in, that his newspaper covers, and where that journalist drove was where he knew flock cameras would be. And then after he did his 300-mile journey in that day, he visited 9 precincts that cover the area police precincts, and 7 of the 9 precincts, due to the Public Disclosure Act, gave him the information that he was looking for, to see if he was visible on these cameras. No crimes had been committed. There was no investigations going on, but they gave him that information, and he was able to determine from the information, that the data that he got, a pattern of travel. So, and when I first heard this, on the 27th. You know, that's one of the things that jumped in my mind. So I'm wondering, you know, if you're coming to us for a vote, what protocols documented that you have in place to ensure that your staff, you know, isn't going to release, or there's going to be steps that have to be followed, documented, that before they release to anyone, whether it's other law enforcement or someone coming off the street, you know, public, you know, claiming Public Disclosure Act, you have to give it to me, et cetera.
Okay, thanks, William. You brought me that case some months ago, and we talked about it. I looked at the case extensively. Oftentimes, unfortunately, law enforcement and everybody else is judged by the last bad act. That was not public information when it should not have been released. Simply because you're driving in an area and you send in a public disclosure request, that only covers public information, and that is not public information. And the only way it would become public information if one of us had been looking at the case criminally and looking for a specific card. After that investigation was over, it would become public information. The information should not have been released. That was an error. It would not even come close to meeting our criteria. If another law enforcement agency enters a case number looking for a specific vehicle involved in a crime or a stolen vehicle, that is the type of information would be released. What you're describing is typically not appropriate. It would not occur and not would be in our, be within our decision-making matrix at all. I was actually quite surprised that case came about in the manner that it did. Sometimes looking at things from a different viewpoint identifies weaknesses, and whoever did that was much in error in releasing the information to him. It should not have been done.
And, you know, and I understand that, and thank you, because I know we did talk about this. Errors do happen, though. So in order to prevent errors from happening, the processes have to be in place. And, you know, that's the point of my question. What sort of processes are going to be in place? I know where you two stand, but what processes are going to be in place when someone across on the other side of the plaza gets a request and maybe you're not there, or they don't fully understand, or maybe it's someone that they know, you know, that they've done business with, you know, through the city, and gives them information that maybe they shouldn't be giving them. Is there going to be a process in place that everyone's going to fully understand, that we can understand if we saw it?
Absolutely, there's going to be oversight. But let me give you an example. Let me compare that to an officer standing in the street with a body cam on. If I'm standing in the corner of 232nd and 56 with my body cam activated, taking pictures of traffic as it goes by, that information is disclosable as under public information, even though there's no case involved or anything. In the case of a camera, that's mounted on, in the case of a flock camera mounted in the same corner, that information is not public information until we make it such. So let's draw a distinction about how much risk we're taking in flock camera versus a body cam that goes in your neighbor's house, that goes in your house, that involves itself in which may be the worst day of your life. With some exceptions, a lot of that footage is publicly disclosable with some editing due to privacy concerns. That is much more of a risk than these cameras in comparison. And in answer to your first part of the question, is there going to be a process? Absolutely, there will be oversight. There'll be supervisory review, command review, just like with everything else we do that's low incident, high risk, which is what this is. There'll be very stringent policy and very stringent oversight. I can assure you of that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Page. Any other questions, Councilmember Sonmore?
I just have a comment. I'm just going to talk about my opinion about the cameras. So I am putting in faith of what I'm reading and what the police department is telling us what would be another tool in the toolkit that is needed for crime. I see this as a 2-year trial period to see if you like it, to see if it's working. But to me, I'm here to prevent crimes, or this probably already happened, a crime, but I can go back to some of the neighbors that have been coming in and talking about the crime that's been going on in their areas. And when they were telling me, sorry, I got a little allergic reaction to some food I ate, so I'm having some problems talking, but I can go back to them and tell them that we are looking into those well, we'll be looking into those areas of crime, but we're putting another tool in our toolbox to help support you. And that's what I'm here for, is to really help protect our citizens. We're by the light rail now. Crime's already coming in. It's going to keep on coming in. Child alert, child abductions are going to keep on happening. If you've ever been a part of one of those, I can tell you it is the worst feeling in the whole entire world to not know where your child, grandchild, niece, or nephew is, and to have that alert is beyond helpful in a way that we can do it. A lost senior, I have not experienced that, but I know people who have, and it is horrible, and something to help solve a crime. At least it's a process, right? At least it's something that we're trying, it's something that we're going to utilize. Years ago, we looked at red light cameras, and we felt that the Texas company gave out too much information. But you look at Linwood, you look at Edmonds, and I've got to tell you, your data is being collected by all different sources. Your data is being collected. The government knows a lot about what's going on. And these flock cameras, I don't think, is the biggest issue that we need to worry about where our data is going. And I am trusting in what the company is saying about what they're doing with the information. Yes, I know mistakes happen. We call it, at work, we call it human factors. We're humans, and there's always going to be mistakes no matter what. And good, bad, or indifferent, unfortunately, mistakes are always going to be made. But the biggest mistakes are being made are by those criminals, and that's who we're trying to get off the street and help protect our citizens. And I know I'm going on a rampage here, but I'm just trying to say it's just another tool in the toolbox. Sorry, we always used to use that term when it came to budgets, but to help us, with crime. So I'll just stop there, but I'm just trying to promote it just as another way. I kind of see it as being like a little partial tool that instead of hiring another full-time officer, we're just using a little portion of money to hire a tool to look at what we can do to help people keep safe.
Yeah, it definitely would be a force multiplier for us in some situations. A good example of where it may have helped us in the past, last year we had a home invasion robbery, which was a terrible crime for the family that it happened to. But if we had a flock system in place and the vehicle that was involved in that crime happened to pass by, we could have solved a crime like that maybe in hours or days. Our detectives did a fantastic job on that instance and ultimately solved the crime. But in the months it took them to develop and find all the information and all of the evidence for that crime, 4 other families were victimized, which is, for me, what I want to avoid for our community, and this would help us do that.
Thank you, Commander. Thank you, Councilmember Sonmore. All right, Councilmember Woodard, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Let me first begin with a contextual apology, and that's to Chief and Commander. Last week, we had the honor of giving the proclamation for Police Week, and at the end of that, we were shaking hands, and I neglected to say thank you or shake hands with your officers, with our officers. And I have been holding on to that, feeling absolutely horrible. And so just wanted to apologize to them on the record. And I could give an excuse, but then that lessens the apology. So let's just own it, accept it, and I hope that you receive it. So starting there. Secondly, I wanted to acknowledge the public speaker. Thank you to Sam Doyle. I appreciate that, especially as one of our former DEIC commissioners. This is one of these topics that, once again, we've talked about. Well, maybe that's where we run it through so that we do have some public input. So I'm going to say, as a proxy, she is doing that on our behalf. Sam is doing that on our behalf. I appreciate that, so that we're having this second discussion. Third, and I will eventually get to something that's going to be a question. I just want to say, Kristen, I thought you've done a wonderful job of explaining your system. I appreciate Councilmember Sonmore's point. We're putting a lot of trust in what we're hearing. It's your job to make sure that we come out of this feeling safe. But at the same time, these are hard conversations, and I appreciate the idea that the camera is only focused on the license plate, especially in the context of cameras and how everything is being collected. So all that laid out there, I want to just ask and make sure that we've asked the question. One, this is about timing as far as I'm concerned. Do we lose anything other than time? Obviously, stuff can happen during that time, which will be the follow-up. How long would that time be? But do we lose anything by pulling this off the consent calendar or wherever it lands, or excuse me, the vote tonight, pulling it as a vote to allow the public a chance to have their version? And now let me caveat and say we've done this in the past. No one's shown up after all the chatter online, but in the spirit of us being responsive government, one of our goals, one of our residents has reasonably asked us, hey, this feels, I'm going to put a word in people's mouths, rushed. We know it is not. But nonetheless, when the public becomes aware of things, that's been magically started to happen. So in that regard, rather than say, hey, look at past meetings, do again, my question is, do we lose anything by pulling this off for a vote, running it back through our system, public comment can happen, and then taking the vote after that? So that's kind of a two-part question. And I think that's technically to our city manager.
Thank you, Councilmember. I don't think there is a time commitment that's attached to the contract. If that is the majority of the council's desire to remove the item and then bring it back after a process, whether that includes an open house like the public comment was made earlier, or whether that's some other form of process, I don't think that necessarily would cause an issue.
Thank you. So that stated, and this is where I was getting a little lost in what the procedural, when I look at Councilmember Ryan for Robert's rule here, which is what would be the process to make the suggestion. Do I make a motion here to say we do not vote today and install it? I could look for any language assistance here and see where the council stands.
Thanks. I just as going through the process and making sure everybody's fully heard, I think offering the opportunity for all the council members to speak before a motion is made, but also asking and ensuring that any other public comment that was going to be offered tonight is heard as well before a motion is made.
Thank you, Councilmember.
I'll hold back.
Good. Good, Councilmember Woodard? That answers the question?
Sorry about that.
Okay, very good. And thank you, City Manager. Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. This is the second time we've seen the presentation. It's an excellent slideshow. And I went beyond and looked at it in-depthly prior to our meeting, and it's currently, not saying that this makes it great, but it's currently being used in Washington State in Linwood, Everett, Edmonds, Tukwila, Spokane County, Liberty Lake, and those are just a few things. We do have a trial base for this. There is no facial recognition. It's a license plate only. I like how it can help with silver alerts and amber alerts. I like how we had council member William Page talk about the process. We do have a public disclosure system in the city. Have we really talked about that? There is a system for that. So if there's a case, this would be a question then, do the people come to the police or the city for the public disclosure on a criminal case that's complete or something like that?
Typically, it could go to either place, but eventually it would end up with us. Criminal cases, we have our own public disclosure process. The PD works closely with the public information officer here, public disclosure officer here. We have someone in records that handles that full time. We get a lot of public disclosure requests, so we're used to handling that on a routine basis.
Okay, so there is a system for that. And then I liked how Councilman Member Sonmore said that this system is another tool in the toolbox to protect our community. So I like that. I know that our police system, I'm really happy with our police system. We keep talking about how we're happy about our police system. And so I'm going to respect your recommendation for this system. That's one thing I'm going to take in consideration. Let's see. Does this system, would it help also for finding stolen cars?
A stolen vehicle would show up on a database, and we'd be notified within several moments of a car going through an area that's stolen. That's one of the most obvious big perks of the system. A license plate reader has databases within it showing vehicles that are stolen throughout the United States. So yes, is the short answer to your question.
Oh, good, because I know we have a lot of citizens talk to me, and I see cars that are left somewhere abandoned, maybe for 2 weeks or more. Then I drive by and I see an orange flag on it or a check mark or a ticket on it, and it seems to be there, you know, it could be there a month. I think the system like this would like check it and say, is this stolen, and get it back to the person right away. So that'd be very helpful. Plus it'd help our streets and our community for having abandoned cars. So I like that aspect. Let's see. All right, so that's it for me, but thank you very much for the presentation.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Ryan. Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you both for coming back, as well as Kristen for joining us again. I do appreciate the good conversation here tonight. I think this is an area where I expressed concern our last meeting, and like others have spent a lot of time trying to better understand the technology, the company. I took time and met with our team, you know, both, you know, from the city and from our police force, because I think I have a history of being supportive of us finding ways to utilize technology to better serve our community. I am absolutely a fan. If we can find ways to do things more effectively and efficiently to serve our community, I'm a huge proponent of that, and I applaud staff for always continuing to bring us new ideas of how to do that. I think that's absolutely what happened here. I wholeheartedly believe staff has brought this forward because they believe it is in the best interests of our community. And I think it's important that we as a council take a good look at anything that comes before us and ensure that our perspectives align with the staff's perspectives. And this is a place where I've tried to get to a place, and you know, unfortunately, I think instead of being more reassured as I've learned more about the product, I've actually, like every time I turn around, I have more concern, I think, and more confirmation of, you know, the potential concern within our community. I think we heard in public comment tonight an example of what others are saying. And, you know, we know how often, unfortunately, you know, the community doesn't know about something until after we've already done it. And I think one of my biggest concerns is our police force has done such a phenomenal job of developing quality relationships with our community, trust within that community. And this feels like the type of decision that ultimately I think could alter that in a way that is really hard, or at least a long road to repair. So I do have a couple of, I guess, questions to follow up on some of the conversation tonight, and just my additional reading and research. And so, you know, Councilmember Page mentioned, you know, an article that a journalist did where he was able to get, you know, records of his driving all over an area from multiple police departments. And I have huge faith and trust in our police department and our leadership in our police department. And one of the things that this product in particular does is it expands access to data collected within our community to other communities where we have no oversight and there is no legal requirements in how they manage or utilize the data that is collected here within our community. That is correct, right?
I don't know that's entirely accurate. I'm not aware of their rules. Let me put it that way. I'll surrender that to that statement. they have policies they have to adhere to. They still have to adhere to the rules of entering a case number. They still have to have a criminal investigation. But as to the day-to-day working of that agency, of course, I'm not familiar with it.
Okay. And what we've seen from the examples that Councilmember Page shared is they're not always doing, there are agencies out there who are not doing the right thing by your, account of kind of how it should have been handled, correct?
In this case, absolutely.
Yes. And so there are other police agencies that it would be fully within their purview of how they manage the access that they have to data collected here in Mountlake Terrace.
Christian, correct me if I'm wrong, but the data in our city is our information, right? And
Correct.
the only way the other cities can get it is if they have a case and they use that information for their case. And once it's in their caseload or in their system, then it would be open for public disclosure through that. But they couldn't take a public disclosure request and then come ask us for our information. Is that kind of what you were?
And I guess, yeah, help me, maybe I need to understand better. My understanding is, so let's say we give, I don't want to target whatever, let's say we give another jurisdiction, unnamed jurisdiction access, we share our information with them. If they have an internal process that they've decided on to access records within the Flock system, which includes our records. They don't have to go through us to get to those records. They access those directly through the Flock system. And there is a field that they are supposed to enter, a case number in, but there's no requirement for that, nor is anyone checking that other than their own internal audit mechanisms. Kristen, is that correct?
Yeah, if I could add, so if Mountlake Terrace PD provides access to a neighboring agency to look up information that was captured by Mountlake Terrace's cameras, they would have to enter, as Commander King mentioned, a search reason that would be tied to their user ID. When Commander King, when Chief, or the administrators of the system are conducting their audits, that would come up. So they will have any search of Mountlake Terrace's cameras would be recorded with that search reason and user ID. And it's my understanding that the police department is going to include in their policy outlining the requirement for that case number or incident number to be, specifying that search reason. So it's making that audit very clear, so that they can ensure that it's being used in accordance with department policy. And then Mountlake Terrace PD would be in full control with the click of a button. If they do not wish to share search privileges, they can take those search privileges back. And again, they can share with neighbors, they could share just within Washington State. All of that is very tailorable to what the needs of the department and the city are.
I guess follow up to that then, and this would be for our team. How would you verify whether a search was a legitimate search if it is coming from another police jurisdiction?
There is a case number and a case code entered. Again, I'm not that entering in the system. I'm not competent in the system yet. It's new. We have a lot of growing to do. But in the context of the larger conversation, I want to remind everyone that even if this information is released, all they're getting is a rear license plate and a picture of the car that anyone standing in the street corner can take a picture of at any time. We're not taking pictures inside someone's house. We're not taking facial recognition. It is the rear of a car with a license plate driven on a public road. I think that's important in the context of the conversation, that we all realize that is exactly the data we're talking about, nothing more.
I guess I would disagree with that understanding, and I think maybe that's where some of this, I think difference of opinion comes from. My concern is not with automatic license plate reader cameras as a standalone. My broader concern, and I think a lot of the community's broader concern, is access outside of our community to that data and the ongoing data that then allows patterns to be tracked. I mean, there are cases, and Kristen, you can tell me if I'm incorrect, but there are cases of law enforcement officials using the technology for their own personal use in ways that are harmful, perhaps stalking an estranged spouse, for instance. So there are very real I think there's really very real concerns on an individual level that we can't control once we get outside of our own kind of, within our own staff. Like, we can't control how other agencies utilize their data and how good their audit mechanisms are. And then I would just build on, I think then there's the broader concern about, kind of the world that we live in right now. And, we have conflicting, legal guidance from the national level, from the state level. I think there's a lot of concern about who has access to this information and how it will be utilized. And I don't think it's as simple as a single point in time back of the vehicle license plate read. And actually, Kristen, that was one of my questions. Maybe you can talk to us a little bit about Flock's product, Flock Nova. Your website describes it as the first public safety data platform that unifies CAD, RMS, video, LPR, so the license plate reader, and public records into one simple search for your team to find answers fast. I recognize that is not the product that we have before us, but we are giving you access to utilize our data, and that is one of the products on your platform that brings all of that data together in a way that does identify folks, at least from my understanding. So I guess I would love to have you tell us a little bit more about that product.
So first, to be very clear, we would not pull your LPR data into Flock Nova. We would not share that unless you elect to share that information. It's a completely separate product. So if you were to move forward with a license plate reader, they would not touch each other, so to speak, unless you provide a direct consent to do so.
How does that work with other agencies? If they have that product and they have access to our LPR data, how does that work?
So because it is your data, you own that data. They would not be able to bring your information into that system whatsoever. And one of our core tenets is that you all own your data, and that means you are in full control of who you share that, other law enforcement agencies who you share that data with. You can elect to not provide access to search Mountlake Terrace's cameras and solely just provide the ability to be alerted to wanted vehicles that were associated with a crime that had occurred in Mountlake Terrace. So again, we want this to be very tailored to your community and the needs. So, and again, that data is owned 100% by the city, by the department, and you are in full control of those sharing abilities.
I guess two thoughts to that. Our intention is to share our data with other agencies, correct? That is one of the reasons we are saying that Flock is our choice of products versus one of the other automatic camera, automatic license plate readers that is available on the market, correct?
Part of the value of the system obviously is intelligence sharing from the area regionally for crimes that are committed in a largely urban environment, certainly.
And then I guess, Kristen, I hear you say that we own our data all of the time and that there's no sharing of it without our permission. But I guess I can't get past, and Sam Doyle mentioned it in her comments earlier, but it's one of the things that I copied and pasted into my notes as well from the Master Services Agreement, and that's section 5.3, and I'll just read it because I think it says something different to me than you are saying. And I guess that's where I struggle with a lot of what is said in your marketing materials doesn't seem to align with what I'm seeing in the contract obligations. And that concerns me, right, in terms of trust and transparency. And so that 5.3 says disclosure of footage subject to and during the retention period, Flock may access, use, preserve, and or disclose the footage to law enforcement authorities, government officials, and or third parties if legally required to do so, or if Flock has a good faith belief that such access, use, preservation, or disclosure is reasonably necessary to comply with a legal process, enforce this agreement, or detect, prevent, or otherwise address security, privacy, fraud or technical issues, or emergency situations. That feels incredibly broad to me in terms of Flock's ability to share data without our consent. And I would love for you to assure me why I shouldn't be concerned about that and why that is consistent with your marketing materials that say that we own our data.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. So the language suggests that Flock's access is limited and tied to legal obligations, enforcement of agreements, security concerns, or protection of rights and safety. It does not grant discretionary access to Flock, and the footage is not all of the department's data. It's limited to the data that's captured by the devices. And so in a situation like where Flock would receive a valid subpoena that's issued by a court or a competent jurisdiction, a similar authority, where Flock is compelled to, by law, to comply, we will notify you immediately unless there's a non-disclosure order or applicable prohibiting notice. This will provide you the opportunity to intervene and choose to seek injunctive relief. So really, this is very specific. Again, the footage is not all of the department's data, and it's tied to those instances that are outlined in the sections. I think it's 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Okay, I appreciate the explanation. I think I interpret that language to be much broader than your interpretation, but I appreciate hearing your perspective. Look, I commend our department for looking for solutions to increase safety in our community. And look, is it compelling to hear that there is an easy solution if a child is abducted? Absolutely. As the only person up here that has minor children, like does that pull in my heartstrings? Absolutely. But I think one of the important things that we have to do as a community, and really as I will just say as a society, is, we are at this juncture where we have to decide how much, privacy we are willing to give up, for various, for various assertions of safety. I won't say that I think this is necessarily a solution for safety, at least not as compelling as perhaps it's been presented. But look, I think I have a lot of concern. I appreciated Councilmember Woodard's suggestion of taking the public comment from earlier and perhaps extending the conversation. I would welcome tabling this to a future date to give our community more time to provide input. I also am fine voting on it tonight and voting against moving forward. I've done enough research and had enough conversations at this point that I feel confident that this is not the best solution for our community, and that's for numerous reasons, not just for not just for all of the concerns around how our data is used and how that may negatively impact both perception as well as real safety of our community, particularly at a time where, and I hate bringing national politics into this because it's not something I bring into this room really ever, but I think we would be naive to think that the political climate doesn't impact this decision. We just saw Denver here earlier this month. The Denver City Council voted against a contract extension with Flock Safety because of concerns that their community had brought to them about the use of that product in this current political climate. And so, in addition to that, we've got an unbudgeted ask for a nice to have, that at a time where we don't have money to spend, to be perfectly candid. So even if I thought this was a great product, I think I'd have to give some serious thought into whether or not this was the right decision for us at this time. But, I don't think that it is. I don't think we should be moving forward, with a federally pending lawsuit around the constitutionality of the product. And I think at a minimum, we deserve to give our community more time to weigh in on it. But again, I was going to say, I guess I would love to see where other folks land, but I do appreciate all the time and effort that's gone into it. I don't think this is the right solution for our community at this time. Again, I'm not opposed to looking at other options, even other automatic license plate readers that have a more limited scope in the sharing of data, but I don't think this is the right solution for us.
Thank you, Councilmember Murray. Any other comments? What are the wishes of the council? Do we want to? Yes, Councilmember Sonmar.
I don't think I'm going to go into the political climate because I have seen that on Facebook, and I don't think that's what we're discussing here tonight on these cameras. But I wanted to understand and acknowledge Councilmember Page for the comments that he gave, and I appreciated the comments that we received back about our policies and what we're going to do about that. My other question would be, if we're going to postpone it, we just wait 2 weeks and just have the same conversation again? I'm just wondering what we're voting on. So.
Yes, Councilmember Page.
I just want to add that, I think Kristen and my fellow members here, the attributes of this system has been, talked about, and I agree completely with the attributes and what it can do and what it will do. And I think, but the question here is, what we're really talking about here is the community trust in Flock, the company, and us as folks, as people who are overseeing the city. And, on a scale, do the attributes, overweigh the fear that the community may have once it goes into if we agree to do this. And the question I have is, and I think we all should be asking, is the fear real? Yeah, it is. How do we here help the community to allay those fears? We don't have to come back here and talk about the same thing. The attributes are there. The community can look at the slides, but sometimes just listening to those fears and addressing those fears. And we've got a well-respected police department and council that should be able to listen to, answer to, and consider those comments and fears, so that at the end of the day, whether it's a week from now, 2 weeks from now, whatever, that we can move forward. And I think that's really what the question is, not how good the system is to some degree, but can we trust it? Can they trust it? And we have to address that because, I haven't seen it on Facebook. I'm not on it too often anymore, but I know the fear is there. When I heard the presentation on the 27th, I was at home, and that popped in my head. The fears. So they're real. So I think that, does it hurt? Do you think it hurts to listen to someone other than the seven of us? Will it help to listen to the community from your standpoint?
Well, it never hurts to listen to two sides of an argument or three sides. I don't know that talking about it again is going to serve any more purpose other than what we've already discussed. If you're asking my personal opinion, I think we discussed it at length. I think we'd have the same discussion again, maybe with a different group of people. I guess that has some value, sure.
Thank you, Councilmember Page. Councilmember Woodard.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm trying to find these unmute. So I appreciate we've circled back to my request or wanting to see where we stood. And I would add more to it. I would absolutely agree. Personally, I feel like at this specific point in time, I do have enough information, and what I've heard has made it a little bit easier. It's a very difficult decision, but a little bit easier to, in confidence, make a vote. However, what I was going to suggest is that we don't have another presentation. My police department has to be out on the streets and doing their work. I don't need them to come back in. Instead, what I would suggest, because the consent calendar is by definition a vote, that we put it on the consent calendar. We give that apparently 2 weeks. I'm fine with the 2 weeks. I would have been fine with a week, which gives people time to give public feedback. We have other systems than just talking to us, and nobody's coming in. Sam herself called in, right? So it's just giving people time to make a complaint, if you will. I'm going to say make their needs known, but it's going to come across as a complaint because they're not going to say yay, most likely. But those folks have time to chime in as well, which is something we haven't discussed. How many residents think we should move forward with this, right? We're so focused on who doesn't think we should move forward. But nonetheless, if we moved it to the consent calendar, that gives us time to see what the feedback is, and then any 7 of us can pull it off the consent calendar and have another discussion that day. If we don't see anything that's worthy of one of us thinking it needs to be pulled off, we make our vote by saying it's on the consent calendar, and every time we approve it, it's a vote. Does that track? And again, that's where I'm going with Robert's rule. Does that actually make sense? This has been my experience for 6 years, but this is only like the 3rd, probably really a controversial matter we've had. And I will just say from where I sit, it is our responsibility. That's why they voted us to say that I have been thinking about your interests, what I honestly think all of us are doing very effectively. We just talk to different parts of our community and trying to move forward as a council. I don't think that this, of all the decisions in the world, is going to be the one that broke the system. I do think, though, that it's a recognition that we have spent, at least in my 6 years, saying, speak up, speak up, speak up. And they finally did. And our issue is you didn't speak up when I wanted you to. Because as far as I'm concerned, I say no, go back to today and the original presentation. You do some homework, same as you're asking us to do, and then come back at us with what you're interested in as a resident there, not us as a council, so that it isn't the 7 of us, but we are giving more time for people to get off the armchair quarterbacking that they're doing on Facebook, which is not what's motivating me here. It's just recognizing that that did get people's attention for the first time. And I'd like to see who's stepping out. Because if we go off of that, let's be clear. They were galvanized, and who showed up today? One person, the person who galvanized them. Where's everybody else, right? So I'm saying I don't know anything changes, but I at least allow other people, because they'll write this one up. We're talking about it so long, they have no choice. I imagine Mr. Senate will do a long discussion about this and see where people land in the spirit of using other ways to get information in front of us to get it off the consent calendar if they, by definition, don't consent themselves. So a lot of words, hoping you heard them, just trying to be responsive, but also recognizing we've set up a request, we've instituted a culture, and feels like we're maybe not honoring the culture we've been trying to establish, which is please speak up.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Woodard. Did you want to, City Manager, want to speak or clarify anything? Just want to make sure that the opportunity is offered for anybody that's in person that wants to speak before council makes a decision whether to vote or to table the discussion. Also, the consent agenda on June 5th is available if that's something council wants to do. Very good. Okay. And just note, this has not been set up as a public hearing, so perhaps if folks are in the audience and wanted to speak to it, they didn't have the opportunity because it's not a public hearing. But Sam rightfully took the opportunity to speak during public comment, but maybe others wanted to speak to it. Is that what you're saying? Is should we postpone it and have an actual open session, public hearing for folks to be able to come and testify, or should we open it up now? Yeah, I think what the desire, or if the desire of council is to postpone it until June 5th, we can set up a process specifically to solicit comment on this particular item, make sure we're people hear, or people have the opportunity to be heard. If that's what the council's desire is, we can certainly do that. I do think that there should be an opportunity for any folks in the audience that wish to speak to be able to do so, or at least have the opportunity to do so. So, agreed. Yeah, very good. Okay, thank you, City Manager. Councilmember Sonmore.
Yeah, I just want to make one comment. Since I've been on the council for almost 25 years, whether you want to listen to me or not, being a council member is about making tough decisions and knowing your neighborhoods, knowing your residents, and knowing what to do. When we passed the 1% on property taxes, we didn't say, wait, we want to find out if you guys want property taxes to go up or not. We had to make this hard decision whether we wanted to or not. I understand getting more information, but I don't want to put fear in everybody going out there. We're going to be talking about ICE. I'm going to be talking, if I go back out there, I'm going to be talking about getting license plates numbers. I don't want to cause fear, but being on council is about making tough decisions for your community. And if you want to run back every time you don't like something on the agenda and go back to your community for it, fine. But if you don't want it, just say you don't want it. But eventually you're going to have to make a decision. I just want to put that out there because being on council is not easy. It's about making tough decisions, and you're here to represent your citizens. And so next time you vote on raising taxes, raising license plate fees, think about that and how many times you want it on the agenda. This is just one little thing we're doing, putting cameras out there so we can prevent crime or help solve crime. And we're going back out there because we had one public comment today and some comments on Facebook. So I'm just looking to you to make these tough decisions on knowing your community and what you want to vote on. If you're on the fence, I get it, if you want to get more information. But if you already know, vote tonight and move on. But that's one of the things that is very tough about being on council, is having to make those hard decisions.
Thank you, Councilmember Sonmore. Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'd make a suggestion also. I do like the comments about adding a little more time. I'm thinking because we have a council member, our mayor, absent, and this seems like a critical vote. So I want to make sure, and this vote is going to need to be 2/3, the majority, to pass. I would recommend to table it. It would all then give more time if people want to talk about it. And then we'll put it on the agenda again. And I don't think we need any more presentations unless you think we do. And public comment or whatever. And then we'll table it and then we'll vote when everybody's here. So I don't want, if somebody's gone, I don't want to vote. So if someone's absent, this is a hot topic, don't know where everybody's going, want to be fair to the council and the citizens for our majority vote. So we have someone absent. So I'd recommend that we do a motion on tabling it until everyone is present. Thank you.
I'm open for motions. Fire away. Councilmember.
Any more discussion? Okay.
We can have discussion after the motion if we have one on the table.
Okay, thank you. I would make a motion to table the flock camera system and agreement for, I don't know what time. I'd have to ask the city manager when you think we could do this next. Did you say June 5th?
June 5th, and we could put it on the consent agenda and council members could pull it off if they'd like to, or we can just add it as a separate item.
Yeah. Okay. I would say table it, put it on an agenda item for June 5th for further discussion and a vote.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Councilmember Page.
Well, I guess the question I have is, kind of like what Councilmember Sommer said, if we're going to vote, we can vote. But it sounds like what we really want to have happen at whatever meeting is opportunity for the community to, express themselves. So I'm thinking that the motion should say something more about what that purpose is versus just coming together again June 5th and voting. Correct?
Yeah, we can do that separately. I mentioned that we can design a process specifically to solicit input on this and let people know that this item will be on your June 5th agenda if that's the way this motion is voted.
And would allow for public comment.
Yes.
At the meeting on the specific.
Yeah, written comment previously and public comment at the meeting.
Very good. And is that the understanding of the motion maker?
Can I understand what you just said to Councilman Page? So we're just moving it to the June 5th meeting because there's some people on the fence, and we're going to do a public outreach for this?
Yeah, so what we'll do, and I'll work with our police department and ensure that people are aware that they can provide comment. It's basically an enhanced public comment process on this specific item. And then we will bring those comments to you at your June 5th meeting, but also allow public comment at that meeting if people desire.
Very good.
So the message that we're putting out there will just be a general statement about what the system does, or what it can help with.
Yeah, we will be neutral when describing the product, and allow people to choose for themselves what position they'd like to take.
And the council would like our residents' feedback, like to hear from you.
Correct.
Basically.
Yep.
Very good. All right, Councilmember. So we do have a motion on the table, and Councilmember Woodard, further discussion.
I just wanted to verify a comment, or excuse me, ask a comment. Whatever. Sorry, this is what happens when you call for the future. In that announcement to the public, will we also link this meeting and the previous meeting? Because I am hoping that what we motioned is to put this on the consent calendar, at which point one of us would have to take it off the consent calendar because they saw something between then and now, not wait 2 weeks for people to come and tell us in person. I feel like we've given that opportunity. This is, let's let them stay in their comfort zone, which is writing to us, right? So that's where I'm at. That said, I want to apologize because it sounded like you said there are people, I don't see that, right? I just see the camera on you all. So if there are people in the audience right now who have shown up to give us feedback, I do want to make sure they get a chance to speak, which I keep hearing our city manager say, but again, I don't know if I'm talking to an empty room. If you aren't and they want to talk, I apologize because I can't see you, which is kind of the point. We want to see you. So that's why I'm saying we're giving you 2 more weeks. Who didn't we see? I am not on the fence. I said that. Let's be clear. I think we could take a vote. I think we should take a vote. But I'm also comfortable with waiting on that vote because, quite frankly, that is the other aspect of that responsibility that this community has granted me personally, which is we trust you, but we also trust you to know when, hey, maybe you don't know everything because you didn't get a chance to hear from us, which is why I used the word earlier, magically. I get it. People have busy lives and they learned about this. And a lot of people spoke up, but I always say that's armchair quarterbacking. Come on the public record. And that's what I'm giving people a chance to do. Maybe they were too busy because I'm pretty sure all that chatter took place in the last couple of days, right? So it's like, I'm just asking for more time. I have not heard anything that's going to change my personal vote, which I could make tonight. Again, just being on the record. Instead, I am not kowtowing and saying, oh, I'm afraid to make a vote. I'm saying make sure my vote is as informed as it can be because this one isn't just a regular vote. This is a very specific vote, right? I think it's interesting, though, just as a sidebar, that we're going to have this same conversation when eventually, which sounds like we're going to be talking about cameras in front of schools. And somehow I better hear every argument I heard tonight show up in that one, because that one I'm not actually comfortable with, but that's a whole other conversation for another day. Let's stay focused on today. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Woodard. And just to clarify, we know, I appreciate your comments, but we do know that we have at least one council member that's going to be voting no. And so we shouldn't have it on the consent calendar. We should have it as an agenda item. And that also gives people an opportunity to have their voice heard if they're interested.
So,
thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion? If not, I'll call for the question. All those in favor of postponing this item until June 5th meeting, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Very good. Passed unanimously. We will bring this back up June 5th and look forward to getting any feedback from our residents. Thank you all. Great discussion. Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was a glitch there. Did you say that passed unanimously? I couldn't hear.
Yes.
I did.
Interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
If he wants to comment why I voted to pass it, I just wanted everybody on the council, they seem very determined to do this, and I wanted to support that.
Thank you, Councilmember Sonmore. Okay, let's moving along to the next item. That is the review and vote potentially on the interlocal agreement with the United States Department of Agriculture for wildlife management with Jeff Betts or Carolyn Hope, Deputy Director Carolyn Hope, Manager. Sure. While you're pulling this up, we'll take a 5-minute break and give everybody a chance to stretch your legs.
Okay, back at 10 minutes to 9.
10 to 9, we'll bring it back up. Okay, it is 8:50. We'll call this meeting back to, sorry, hold on. Holding.
Recording in progress.
All right, it is 8:50. We're calling this meeting back to order. Deputy City Manager Carolyn Hope, fire away.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Good evening, City Council and community. I am filling in for Director Betts tonight on the interlocal agreement with participating agencies in the USDA for the 2024-2028 Waterfowl Management Program. So the purpose for the evening is to review and potentially vote on an interlocal agreement with the USDA for a 4-year period for waterfowl management and for an associated 2025 field service agreement, which is the contract for the year, which is $2,500. So we'll just go over the history of the project, the summary of the details of the ILA and the agreement, the budget, and the request of council. The ILA does address 2 of council's goals for responsible governance and environmental sustainability. And this item has come before council many times.
I'm sorry, folks, if you are talking and you can hear me, we can't hear you online.
We're working on that right now.
I heard you, interesting enough.
All right, try.
All right, testing. Can you hear me, Councilmember Woodard?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, great. So this interlocal agreement has been in place since 2002, except for a brief period in 2024 that we did not renew just because we had low populations of waterfowl and USDA staff were not out in the field as frequently during the COVID times. So we are looking to reinstate this ILA. Just to give you a little overview, the ILA would allow USDA to work in Mountlake Terrace to monitor waterfowl populations, primarily in Ballinger Park, to educate the community about the population of waterfowl and if we need to manage it, and if needed, carry out an egg aidling program to address the population of waterfowl around the lake. They would provide an annual report to the city as well. So the USDA staff are experts in waterfowl management. They understand how to identify different species of waterfowl. They would do scientific counts and give us information about whether they feel the populations are too big for the conditions at the park. We are looking at things related to environmental and human health concerns, and that they have some thresholds before they would consider an aidling program that would need to be met. Just as an FYI, park staff have been doing some visual counts occasionally throughout the last few months, over the past 8 months, and the highest counts they've seen so far are 130 in one sighting. So the ILA consists of a partnership between Mountlake Terrace and all of the cities and agencies listed here on the right, as well as, of course, the USDA. But all of us together create a partnership and provide the USDA with the funding they need to do this work and governance of the ILA. So geese, the Canada geese, are attracted to grassy areas near water bodies. And so Ballinger Park is a perfect place for them to feel comfortable. And they, when they find a habitat that they like, they tend to grow in numbers. So geese can excrete 1 to 3 pounds of feces a day. So the more geese we have, the more feces we see in the park, in the water, and it is messy, but it also can have some health and environmental hazards that we'll talk about. So one of the things we're concerned about is complying with our 2024 Stormwater Management Manual for Western Washington. And there's actually a BMP for goose waste within that document. And so they do identify that goose waste near water is a concern and can contribute to nutrients and algae growth in the water. And that goose feces also can has pathogens in it and can spread diseases. The most common is swimmer's itch, which is not a huge concern, but it can also have other avian type diseases. So they do encourage jurisdictions within the Western region to decrease the geese pollution in the water by removing waste if possible. It's harder when it's in the grass, easier when it's on a hard surface, and to use deterrent management practices. Another concern is that waterfowl can create damage to habitat. It's a little bit hard to see in this picture, but this area was right next to the lake and very trampled. This isn't a huge problem right now, and I've talked to parks maintenance staff. They don't see it as being a huge problem right now, but if the populations get larger, we would be concerned about the shoreline area where we have habitat plantings being damaged by the geese. So that's the background, and again, this is a contract that's about $2,500 per year. It would come out of the Parks Division budget. There's no additional appropriation requested. Just community notification, we've had this on the agenda twice now, and in the future, like I mentioned, if we do go forward with the ILA, USDA will do public education with the community if they're going to take action. And so our ask tonight is to vote on whether to enter into this ILA and the contract for the year. And I'm open to any questions.
Carolyn. Councilmember Sonmor.
So for 23 years, so we've spent almost, well, if we approve this, it'll be almost $60,000. What education? I don't remember them doing, unless you live around the lake or go to the lake. They're not, who are they educating and where are they educating?
The contract is $2,500 a year.
Right, and we've been doing it for 23 years, so that approximately would be $60,000 if
I
we
see what
added
you're
on
saying.
this
Yep.
contract as well.
Yep. So the education would be if they were to do an ADLing program, that they would notify the community before they do so.
And what exactly is that?
I don't have the details, and we can certainly find that out.
Oh, because I believe they're already in their egg. I mean, they're going to go look for eggs now when they're already hatched. So,
well, the ILA would be for 4 years. So if we've missed this year's window, then we would work on it next year. And if you decide that you don't want to move forward with the annual contract this year, that's understandable.
we should ask our community.
Thank you, Councilmember Sonmor. Councilmember Page.
So when they actually do the oiling, what percentage of the eggs that have been deposited do they actually do? All of them?
I don't have an answer, but I would assume all of them, but I really don't.
Because it doesn't sound like the intent is to kill everything. The intent is to kind of control.
Yeah, I think it's up to the scientists who do the work. So I don't really have an answer for you on that. And I think they're trying to meet a certain threshold of geese. So I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for you on that.
Thank you, Councilmember Page. Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you, Deputy City Manager. I did have, I guess, a question based on a public comment we received about just the types of geese that we're managing. It specifically references an Aleutian cackling geese, which apparently were near extinction several decades ago. I assume one of the benefits of us partnering with scientists is they know about the differences between types of geese, and will ensure that the geese that we're managing are the geese we want to manage versus they indicate these are actually migratory birds that likely do not have population control issues.
Yes, you're correct. And in the observation that when I was out there and took photos, I did not see those Aleutian geese, but that doesn't mean they're not there. And yes, you're absolutely right that the USDA folks would know the difference. And the endangered and threatened species designation was taken off the Aleutian Canadian geese in 2000.
Great, thank you. And then I did just have a curiosity question, and I don't know if you know the answer, given that this is an agreement that goes back some time, but I guess I'm curious just about the jurisdictions that make up this agreement. I think it's interesting, like there's a whole host of kind of greater Puget Sound area communities that are part of this, but also noticed that some of our neighbors are not part of the agreement. So I'm curious, if we know how we got to this group and if we've had conversations with our neighbors. I'm just thinking, because a lot of, they're geese and they fly. There's got to be benefit to shared effort, right? And so like if maybe they have their own management processes outside of this, or maybe it would be helpful for them to know that there are options, particularly relatively inexpensive options. I guess I'm just curious if you have any knowledge into kind of how we got to the group that's before us.
Yeah, this group has been part of the ILA for a long time. It is primarily cities and agencies that are adjacent to water bodies or have large water bodies in their jurisdiction. Or the airports, for example, which have a different set of needs. But I do not know why some of our neighbors are not part of it, and I know Jeff probably would have better answers for you on that. He's been managing this for a long time. I'm sorry he couldn't be here with you tonight.
No, I appreciate, you bringing it forward, and I think, extending the knowledge to them, if nothing else, I think maybe would be a helpful follow-up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Murray. Councilmember Woodard.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you for bringing this report back. It feels like, obviously I'm a little tired, but I recall having this conversation before, us asking for more time because you wanted to vote then, and here we find ourselves. So I want to say thank you for that. I also want to acknowledge that in that time, I learned that this genuinely is a life or death conversation, and that we're talking about our friendly birds instead of people. Shouldn't be neglected that we are really still talking about life. And do we have the right to end it? Do we have the right to give it? But nonetheless, I did my own work to find out that what is presented to us is probably the most, quote unquote, the most humane that you can do for this set of circumstances. When I put it in the context of our beautiful lake, all the work that we're doing down there, it would be really ironic to lose ground because we were too afraid to do what the rest of the earth is having to do, which is manage all the populations. That said, I'm ready for a vote if we get to that situation. Just wanted to acknowledge that this is an example of us stalling, waiting, depending on how you look at it, pushing it to get more time, getting the homework in. In this case, I think we had to do it on our own. I thought we were going to have a different presentation, but I'm fine with that. You haven't said anything that I didn't already learn on my own, and I don't know we added anything by waiting. But nonetheless, I still appreciate the report because it gave us time to educate ourselves. And with that, I would say, just again, thank you for the report.
Thank you, Councilmember Woodard. What are the wishes of the council? If we wish to move forward, I'm looking for a motion to authorize the city manager to enter into a 2025 field service agreement and rejoin the interlocal services agreement for waterfowl management program.
Second.
I need a motion.
Oh.
I'll accept so moved.
If you went to all that trouble, Well, I'd have to bring that up. You really made that long.
So moved? Anybody?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Murray. Do we have a second? Now you can second.
Then I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Got that for the record. Very good. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess that wraps it up. Jennifer, you got all of that? Very good. Okay. Thank you all. We are moving on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Just a couple of things to mention tonight. First, we have pre-registration for swim lessons opened, and immediately 331, I believe I have that number right, slots were taken. We still have a substantial number, and this is for after the pool reopens. So I've said this many times, but I want to make sure we get it out there that the pool is going to be closing on the 17th of this month, and actually day after tomorrow, and will be reopened on the schedule to reopen is June 30th. But we are taking advantage of the closure. So while the pavilion is closed, we're going to be in there doing some work, cleaning up some of the rooms, painting, have our IT team in there redoing some cabling to make sure that we maintain connectivity and enhancing the facilities that are there. So next, I wanted to mention that we also requested through Snohomish County 2 misting tents, which are 10 by 20. And Snohomish County received funding for this program through the State Department of Emergency Management. And what the misting tents are is to provide relief for folks during very hot weather. We'll know that Snohomish County has 10, I believe, available, and we requested 2 of them, so we'll know shortly whether we receive 1, 2, none, depending on the county's trying to attain geographic dispersion, just to make sure that they get the resources to the widest area possible. And lastly, I wanted to mention that I forgot and take full responsibility for not acknowledging last week as Municipal Clerks Week. So I wanted to acknowledge Municipal Clerks Week last week and thank Jennifer for all the things she does to keep us all on track. So that's all I have this evening, and happy to answer any questions.
Very good. All right. So thank you. Any questions for the city manager? Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor, and happy belated Municipal Clerks Week, Jennifer. We do appreciate you very much. I just wanted to, not questions on your updates tonight, Jeff, but going back to the legislative update, I had a couple of follow-up questions that I don't necessarily need answers to now, but I just wanted to make sure that I shared while it's top of mind. And so I think particularly because we heard a lot about timelines in those appropriations of funds, it would be helpful to understand what our timeline kind of for those reappropriated Main Street funds is, and the plan there, and then also to discuss the plan to address the gap in funding for the library roof and HVAC, so that we can figure out a plan to move that forward. And so, yeah, it doesn't have to be tonight, but I would appreciate chatting about that when you have a chance.
Sure. Rook, I'll follow up with the gap in funding. We are working on that with our federal delegation as well. So I'll have more information when that process takes place. As far as the timelines for the Main Street funding, the legislature has been very clear that if we don't spend the money by the end of next biennium, the dollars will be gone. We are planning to break Main Street into separate phases, essentially one block at a time, rather than doing the entire segment like we had initially planned. We're going to combine the appropriated funds with TIB grants. The TIB is a Transportation Improvement Board. If we receive the grants, which we are very likely to receive, and the TIB staff has told us that, we will be combining those two to start the first block of the Main Street program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Murray. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move right into the council liaison report, starting with Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. An easy one tonight. I'm always appreciative. We had our council work session last Thursday, the 8th, and then I had a meeting over at the police department on Monday to chat about the flock product, and that is the extent of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Murray. Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. On May 13th, I attended as a liaison I was on the commission for the Left One Retirement Board for the police. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Councilmember Ryan. All right, Councilmember Page.
And mine is brief also. I have the privilege of being able to, at the last meeting, to present the proclamation for our police force. That was it.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Page. Councilmember Sonmore.
Thank you. So my board reports are left one we had on May 13th with Councilman Ryan, and then also on May 13th, oh, good golly, I just had it pulled up. I just wanted to give you a report out on the Park and Rec. 1 second, I just lost it, but I won't make you wait. But you're going to get a presentation on forestry, and I think you guys will just be thrilled with it. It was an excellent presentation, and you'll get to meet Patrick, who is taking Laura's place, and I think he's a wonderful fit for the city. We just really enjoyed him, so that was a real treat to meet him. And then just a side note, real fast, going off of my council report, as we did a proclamation for Karen Miller, who recently passed away, who was a long-term resident of Mountlake Terrace. We had her, or she had her memorial last Friday on May 9th, and there was well over 300 people that attended at the Nile. And she was a mother of 6, all Mountlake Terrace graduates. She was a former Snohomish County Council member, an Edmonds College trustee, and on, and one of my mentors who I just adored. But on behalf of the city, we had our current mayor, and then we had our former mayor, and myself. We went up there, and with help, we gave the proclamation. But we were also treated that Senator Cantwell was there and gave a precious speech about her and her family. They were dear friends, but it was an absolutely moving experience by one of our now deceased residents. It's very sad to see her not be in our community anymore, but I just wanted to say some grace to her and thank you for all she did for our community. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Councilmember Sonmore. Councilmember Woodard.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. My report is short as well, but I'll start by backing up to say thank you to our city clerk. It turns out me writing out those 30 plus whatever I did last time was my gift to you. Who knew? But you know, I did want to actually pause and say, if you ever needed feedback on how of a rock star you are, I would remind you that you had, of all of the city staff, the biggest shoes to fill. And I will just say, in my experience, I haven't heard anybody once mention that incredible predecessor's name in the context around you, behind your back, anywhere in the building. And we still all have connections to her. So it's not about her, it's about you. So thank you for rising through the challenge so quickly. That must have been a heck of a shadow to get out of. And then us miss your chance to be celebrated. I'm sure it might still have a little bit of a chive to it or burn to it. So I hope that you don't take that personal. There's a lot of stuff going on. I'm sure you know that. That said, I did miss something that I didn't share in that 30 plus I did last time, which is on April 30th. I did attend along with Council Member Page. I don't remember him saying it, but it triggered me. I think the public records training that our city attorney put on. And it was, one, awesome to be in the room with her, but also awesome to see our staff and to know that we were, again, as a responsive and reflective city, going through trainings as a group. I think that matters. I was watching how people were talking to each other and asking questions, and all of that allows them to have a common language. To go back to Councilmember Page's conversation and concern about, well, what happens process-wise if somebody is not able to do what you want when you're there? And I would say, well, I have personally seen lots of examples that the city is doing to make sure that the leadership is always the culture and people don't act out of turn, or don't abuse things or think that they don't have the direction that is there when that leadership is missing. That said, May 3rd, I had the honor of going down to Seattle. Surprisingly, was invited down there to serve on a panel of what's called SAGE leaders. All these are folks who want to become public employees or public officials, elected officials in their own right in various capacities. Following the work that we were doing, they invited me down along with some other County people, and it was just a true blessing. And then lastly, on the 8th, not only did I also join the study session and of course I took up photos, but I also had the opportunity to meet one-on-one with our amazing city manager. So I always appreciate those meetings. And I imagine that you all feel the same way about those one-on-ones. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Woodard. All right, for my report, starting on the 6th, had the South Snohomish County City Council Presidents and Mayors Pro Tem meeting, our monthly meeting. On On the 7th, had the Snohomish County Tomorrow Executive Committee meeting, followed by a meeting with the mayor and I and our new city economic development manager, to talk about economic development opportunities and also some potential opportunities with HASCO. On the 6th, we had our work session. On the 13th, had the Snohomish County Tomorrow Exploratory Committee meeting. I'll expand more on these things at a future date, we're making good progress on, and when we have some final conclusions, I'll be looking forward to reporting on those and where we're going. And we're getting close to a final recommendation for expanding the various topics, including housing, economic development, transportation infrastructure, and health and human services. And next steps are going to be about setting up what kind of structure or how we want to engage more on those subjects. Also, we'll be talking with Snohomish County cities to look at where we could fill in the gaps. So there's certain areas that Snohomish County Tomorrow is going to expand. And so I'm going to be wanting to talk with the Snohomish County cities about other topics like budget and finance and criminal justice and public safety and some of those other areas that Snohomish County Tomorrow will not be covering. So we're making sure that we're getting full coverage on all the key topics and issues that we're addressing here in Snohomish County. Let's see, I think, I guess brings us to tonight's meeting, so I'll conclude my report there. With that, are there any final comments? New business? Anybody have new business? Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I meant to add this into my report, but wanted to make sure to flag for folks that our monthly Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission meeting is moved, and this month will be on Tuesday, the 20th. And those meetings are now at 6:30 p.m. for folks that are interested. So that is all. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Murray. Any other comments, thoughts, ideas? If not, I wish you well. Have a great weekend, and we will look forward to seeing you again next week. I'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you.